UK Cambridge Centre podcast. In this Integrated Cancer Medicine Research in Focus series, I talk to various ICM members about their research and how it is supported by the vision of the Mark Foundation Institute for Integrated Cancer Medicine. MFICM research uses cutting-edge analytics to maximise the use of diverse high-volume datasets and by capturing cancer heterogeneity in time and space in patients receiving active treatment. Integrated cancer medicine aims to transform the way the world treats cancer by affecting patients along their treatment pathway and ultimately accelerate cures. Today I have with me Ines Machado, Gabriel Funingana, Thomas Buddenkotte and Amied Shadmaan to talk about the research that they are doing within the collaborative projects between GE Healthcare, the University of Cambridge and Cambridge University Hospitals, and to give us an update on the development of the Oncocare platform. Rather than run through everybody's title, I think I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So, Ines, could you tell us your name and your affiliations?
So I'm a postdoctoral research scientist at the Cancer Research UK and the Department of Oncology in the University of Cambridge.
And Gabriel, tell us your affiliations.
Hello everyone, my name is Gabriel Funingana. I'm a medical oncologist by background and now a clinical research training fellow at Cancer Research UK Cambridge Institute and PhD student in Brenton's and Crispin groups.
Fantastic. And Thomas, can you tell us what you do now and how you're affiliated with this project?
Yeah, I'm Thomas. I'm an AI research engineer, specialized in medical image analysis. And I'm a postdoc at the University Medical Center of Hamburg. I'm also applied at a ME based in Hamburg. And I'm helping this project a little bit on the side as a consultant.
Thanks very much. And you used to be here at the Cambridge University.
I used to do my PhD in medical image analysis for this project, yes.
Nice, thank you. And last but not least, Amied, tell us about you.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks for having me on the podcast. My name is Amied Shadmaan. I'm with GE Healthcare. My role is Director AI and Clinical Collaborations, and I help to run the project with Cambridge colleagues.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for being with me this afternoon. So first of all, Amied, let's start with you. Would you just tell us what the Oncocare platform is and what is its main function?
Yeah, sure. I know that General Manager of Oncology, Ben Newton, was on this podcast previously, and I know he's described GE Healthcare's interest in oncology and more specifically precision medicine. And I thought maybe just recapping on a bit of context as to why GE Healthcare is interested in oncology, maybe that's a good place to start, and then kind of delve into the Oncocare platform, if that's okay.
That sounds perfect.
So GE Healthcare, most people know, are a big radiology medical imaging device manufacturer, really focused in the radiology space. But over the last sort of 5 to 6 years, we've been kind of delving into this care pathway vision around oncology, cardiology, and neurology, at least initially. And that's really driven by talking to our customers and collaborators about some of the challenges they face. And they're not always resolved by the next best medical device, whether that's an imaging device or other. There's more end-to-end workflow challenges that they're dealing with. Most of them relate to multimodal data, extracting insights and presenting this type of data in a more disease-specific manner. To add to that, the electronic medical records today are mostly designed for billing and accounting for services that are being provided and are often a one-size-fits-all, no matter the disease, no matter the patient, no matter the hospital size or the hospital remit and scope. And Oncocare is a tool that we are developing to address some of these challenges by providing a longitudinal patient view for a given patient, combining clinical data sources across the EMR, the PACS, so imaging archives, genomic servers, labs, etc., combining all that information to help synthesize specific oncology context for the clinician or user to view a patient. And today's version really kind of re-represents the EMR data in a more specific oncology context. But future features that we are evolving and planning are really going to help us provide much more value through predictive tools to support decision-making, things that you'll hear the Cambridge research team here talk about. Maybe other features like clinical trial matching, elements relating to imaging analysis as well. But really what we're trying to build is a much more intuitive interface for clinicians to reduce the admin burden on working through patient out clinics or MDT preps, etc. And we expect this to lead to better patient outcomes. So that's a very brief context and a brief recap of what Oncocare is.
That was great. That was such a good synopsis. And the NDT, multidisciplinary team meetings, I'll just expand that one for our listeners. And EMR, what does that stand for? I don't even know that.
Electronic medical records. It's your system that hosts all your patient record within a healthcare system.
Thank you. And where are we in the project now, Amied? So I can't remember quite when we began, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we've been working together for several years now. We're 2/3 of the way through our initial program, which was focused on gathering inputs and insight to evolve our product, the Oncocare tool, and also to support some of the research at Cambridge that we'll hear about shortly as well, I imagine. During this initial phase, we've run a small study to understand the value that this product can bring to oncologists, to clinical trial nurses, and to MDT coordinators. And we're on the cusp of, I don't think I can mention it officially just yet, but we are, hopefully maybe by the time this is actually published, we would have the agreement signed, but we're looking at a prospective deployment of the tool and a study to better understand the benefits and how it applies in a real world setting.
That's really exciting. So hopefully we're on the cusp of it being, tested in a real world setting. So we're that much closer to giving impact to our patients. Let me start then with Ines. Do you want to briefly outline your research area in the context of the project? And then I'll ask Thomas and Gabriel to do the same.
Yes, sure. In the lab, we developed a machine and deep learning techniques for the analysis and the interpretation of biomedical data, and then specifically for this project, with a focus on ovarian cancer. So one of the challenges in ovarian cancer is to better measure and predict response to chemotherapy. So we look at multimodal data that is acquired during treatment, and we try to implement AI and machine learning techniques to analyze this data. So I'm currently looking at CT scans that are acquired during treatment. And so usually we have a pre-treatment CT scan and a post-treatment CT scan. And the idea is to try to track how these different lesions in the body respond to treatment, because ovarian cancer is very heterogeneous and a very metastatic disease. So you have dozens of different disease sites, and then each disease site responds different to treatment. So some of the lesions shrink, some of the lesions expand. We have some lesions that appear after treatment, some disappear. So the idea is to have this AI tool that is able to track these different lesions during treatment and try to quantify shrinkage and expansion across different disease sites during treatment. And then one of the questions is, can we try to understand or to better discriminate between responders and non-responders? Are there patterns in these populations that could tell us this patient is going to respond to treatment, this patient is not going to respond to treatment? So if we can predict in advance that if a patient is not going to respond to treatment, we could offer probably alternative pathways for that patient. So I'm currently looking at quantification of response during treatment and try to find ways of extracting biomarkers during treatment that are better linked to clinical endpoints, such as, for instance, survival, or other clinical endpoints, such as pathological response, for instance.
Wow, thank you. Thomas, how are you inputting in the project?
So I'm working on a technical but very important part of this AI pipeline that Ines has just described, which is called image segmentation. So we put in one CT image, it's either before or after treatment, and we want to find all the tumors in this image, and we want to carefully delineate them. And this really gives us the advantage that we know in each voxel, on each pixel, whether there is a tumor or not. And so we can really measure the tumors like Ines just described. We can quantify the tumors. We can differentiate, these are tumors that are further up in the liver. These are tumors that are further down in the bottom, the pelvis. And this really helps defining the patterns that Ines just described. And this is rather technical, but it's a very important point, because this way we can automatically analyze these images. And for radiologists, it would be a very time-consuming process to do so. So we really hope to do this automatically by AI with satisfactory performance very soon.
And just to clarify for our listeners, you wouldn't be taking the place of the radiologist, you would just be aiding them so that you had done all of the technical segmentation work, and then you would give it to a radiologist to look at to assess treatment.
Exactly, yes. We wouldn't replace any radiologists there. If a radiologist would do this by hand for one scan, it would roughly take 1 hour. So this is completely infeasible in clinical practice to that for all the thousands of patients that there are each year in the UK. So they do something more primitive than carefully outlining the disease, which only takes a few minutes or a few seconds. And if we give them this extra knowledge, then we hope that this adds up to the image and they can better understand the disease.
Fantastic, thank you. And Gabriel, how does your research fit in with this amazing project?
Yeah, so I am a clinical support for the GE collaboration and also for the deep neural network models development for the medical imaging. But also my role is to bring genomic testing to the clinic. And finally, my aim is to have a clinical trial platform where we can integrate all these different aspects that we have from end-to-end patient pathways, where we can integrate different knowledge about the patient's journey or the patient's presentation or response to treatment with this medical imaging understanding from the segmentation and from the co-registration, and also with other features that we can extract from the patient's genomes. And then we can hopefully build these patient-centered clinical trials where we know ovarian cancer is a complex disease and every individual patient has a different sensitivity to treatment or resistance to treatment. So this is what is the challenge in front of us. And that's why for ovarian cancer specifically, we will need a multimodal integration framework, because it's a patient-specific change that we have to capture, and only by integration we actually can achieve this.
Yeah, absolutely. So each patient has a specific set of circumstances that only pertains to them, and we need to make sure that we understand each one so that we can give each person the best possible care.
Exactly.
Brilliant. So I know, Ines and Thomas, you've already told me a little bit about what you're working on at the moment. I'd be interested in talking about other AI models or tools that you're working on, because I think that it's an area that's increasing at the moment exponentially, AI in healthcare. So can you tell us a little bit about any other AI tools that you're working on for this project or otherwise in your research?
So I can mention a bit about my project of my PhD, and this is something that we are actually continue here in the lab. Another challenge in cancer research is, for instance, brain cancer. So when a patient is diagnosed with brain cancer, we have this preoperative MRI that shows where the tumor is located. And then during surgery, because it is very difficult to look by naked eye where the tumor is, what the surgeon does is just that instead of looking at the patient's brain, he is guided by this preoperative MRI in the operating room. But one of the challenges is that as soon as you open the skull and you look at the patient's brain, everything shifts. So there's like a big deformation. So this image that was acquired before treatment started no longer translates exactly what's going on during surgery. So one of the challenges is, and one of the questions that we are trying to answer is that can we use AI to know exactly where the brain tumor is during surgery? And this will allow to maximize resection. So it means that surgeons are able to take a biggest percentage of the tumor and avoid touching parts of the brain that codify, for instance, language or movement that we want to avoid. So this is another project that we are following up in the lab. So we have like a data set of patients from which we have the actual tumor tissue. And we are currently collaborating with the Department of Civil Engineering in Cambridge, where we are trying, for instance, to use these laser range scanners when you try to reconstruct the surface of these tumor tissues. And then the idea is to do some sort of like data integration when you look at pathology, genomics, clinical reports of these patients to try to better inform for a clinical decision making.
Wow, amazing. Thomas, what else are you working on?
In this GE project specifically, I'm working on trying to use data that has not been annotated by radiologists to make my model better. So we already got some radiologists to annotate scans of ovarian cancer patients. We got a couple of hundred, which is already a lot because it takes 1 hour each to annotate from a very highly skilled expert that doesn't have much time. But we have thousands of more scans, and it would take years to annotate them all. So we research in how we can use these scans without annotations to still let the algorithm learn something from them, because we already know that it's ovarian cancer scans. So that's my main task that I'm doing in Cambridge. And outside of Cambridge, I'm working on making medical image reporting more efficient using natural language processing, something like ChatGPT. So the idea is that when the radiologists do the reporting, they see a scan, and when AI is in play, they would first see the scan and what the AI sees in the scan. And then the radiologist can look at both at the image and the AI results and can say, oh, I think there the AI missed something, but this what the AI spotted, that's actually not disease or tumor or whatever. What we're trying to do is to use natural language processing to make this efficiently. So the radiologist has to speak in the microphone, and then the AI automatically realizes what the radiologist is going to say and adapts the proposal of the image analysis AI accordingly. So that only with a few words spoken into a microphone, the report is updated instead of the radiologist having to type the whole report again from scratch by hand. We hope that this really takes a lot of the workload off from the radiologist. And I think it's a really promising tool. You can kind of imagine it like ChatGPT chatting with a document, but it's specialized for this very purpose.
Yeah, really interesting. And Gabrielle, what else are you working on?
My other aims are to bring this whole genome sequencing testing, which is offered by NHS Test Directory, to other hospitals. So we try to establish the pathway in other hospitals in the Eastern England region. So I'm currently working on that. And this is also going to be coupled with the GE collaboration we have, so with the Oncocare system, because then we can implement this system in other hospitals, so for other patients and other electronic medical record systems. So hopefully this will allow us for the data to speak between different hospitals, which is something that sounds easy but is more challenging, but this is a great opportunity ahead of us. And my second project is to look at what are the combinations we want to use to actually improve the outcome for ovarian cancer patients. So to look at a biology of the cell lines that we have derived from the patients in our study, and to see what drug combinations to give, being informed by our single cell technologies, where we look at the proteins level, and we have some interesting findings there that we can use maybe different schedules of the standard of care drugs, so drugs that are already used to treat ovarian cancer, but rather than give them in a canonical way, so we give concomitantly, so at the same time we maybe shift them by a couple of days, and actually the outcome will improve. And these are some nice results observing using this approach for treating breast cancer, where actually all of patients were alive after 3 years, compared to the classical treatment only 88% of patients were alive. So we see some very great opportunities ahead of us. So all these things are aligning perfectly, and now hoping to bring them together in our collaboration.
Really exciting. Thank you. Amied, perhaps I can ask you this one. I know that we're focusing on ovarian cancer for this proof of concept study for Oncocare, but do you think that these tools will be cancer agnostic eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. Oncocare is a disease-agnostic tool. We aligned with the Cambridge team on this collaboration around ovarian cancer first, as it was a high priority for Professor Brenton, the PI of the study, and the research teams at Cambridge. But I think all the items that Ines and Thomas also spoke about here, I think apply beyond ovarian. And, you know, maybe just talk a little bit more why ovarian works for us as well, at least as an initial proof of concept. Although it's a complex disease, it's a much more simplified pathway in cancer versus breast or prostate or lung, where you have, you know, screening pathways, you have multiple treatment avenues. Ovarian in that way, although the outcomes for patients aren't great, let's be real about that, the pathway itself is really straightforward. I think that will change over time as we get better at diagnosing earlier stage disease, maybe introducing screening pathways, etc. I think it will get much more complex, but where it is today means it's quite ripe for us to at least test and evaluate proof of concept with these tools bringing to market.
Thanks, Amied. In terms of translating it to the clinic, Gabriel, can you outline how we're doing this with Oncocare at the minute?
We have this great prototype from Oncocare, from our GE collaborators, and we have developed these models using the data that was extracted from the patient records of the ovarian cancer translational study called OVO4. And we now aim to use this prototype in a real-world setting. So first, probably as an evaluation of how the clinicians or the healthcare team will actually use it, and how would they actually assess the interaction with a different system. because everyone is very busy and we need to actually find the best way to measure the practical added value of these new ways of looking at the data. So the first step is to actually see how are different types of healthcare providers going to interact with the Oncocare system. And this will be more a qualitative improvement kind of analysis. And then learning from that and learning from actually also the data ecosystem that has to come together with the deployment of Oncocare. We will aim also to study this prospectively. So actually to see practical changes in the patient's pathways. As Amied said, the pathway is straightforward, but it's very fragmented because the patients are coming from different hospitals to have their diagnosis to a tertiary center like Addenbrooke's, and then they have the treatment either locally or centralized in Addenbrooke's. So we are missing out sometimes part of the patient's journey. So we also want to see if Oncocare can allow us to have this platform where the data can flow in all in one rather than being dissipated across different systems. And also, if the next step to me will be to see how Oncocare can allow us to integrate other data modalities like genomic data, and that data could be used to screen patients for clinical trials. So to accelerate the way the genomic data is interpreted in a specialist advisory board, we call it Genomic Tumor Advisory Board, and then how that report gets back to the referring or the treating physician, oncologist or surgeon, and how is that presented to the multidisciplinary team, and then taking on to actually consider patients for an alternative treatment if we find that they might be less likely to respond to the standard of care treatment. So I think these are the steps. So a qualitative improvement test, and then a prospective, mostly about data ecosystem building, and then thinking about trial matching setting.
Brilliant. And what do you think that the impact of all this research will have on treatment pathways and outcomes?
Yeah, I think maybe there's this one bluntly, we shouldn't be in this if we're not looking to impact, these outcomes for patients or treatment pathways. So that's number one objective, really. How will impact, I think I'd love to see these tools to be deployed clinically. I'd love to see them enriched with features that enable better prediction of disease or outcomes, an ability to provide treatment decision support for clinicians. And then we expect all these kind of tools and innovations to translate to better outcomes for patients, and something that we can track and measure over time and show that actually these tools are making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Did anyone else want to come in on that one?
To add, I think what Amied said exactly is we can surface elements in patient's journey that maybe be missed out or could be difficult to actually track because, we are flooded with information, but information at the moment is not always transferred into knowledge. So we want to maximize how information is transformed into knowledge to make an actionable decision for the patient's outcome. So changing the treatment or accelerating a diagnostic test. So all these different implications that we will see in the future. So I definitely think this will have a major impact on patient's outcome.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Gabriel.
So one other aspect I also see is transferring knowledge, especially in my field where we're doing the segmentation, really outline and delineate the tumors. So this is, as I said, very time consuming and not typically done in clinical practice. And so there are very few clinicians who can actually do this. But we can give them the AI model, for example, via the Oncocare platform, and then they can get this information. We can really share this knowledge to them, and this might help them treat the patients better and find out more about the disease.
It's really exciting, isn't it? Because you're not only integrating data within the platform, but there's AI and machine learning going on in the data pipelines that feed into the platform as well. So it's kind of layer on layer of helpful AI to impact the patients. I wanted to ask you, I know there's always a lot of mention of AI models in the media and machine learning. And I wondered if you could comment about what the main challenges you would outline and opportunities, obviously, with using AI models on patient data or sensitive data, and how you've overcome these within the project.
Yeah, so I guess there are a couple of challenges in AI for healthcare. The first has to do probably with the amount of little data, private data, multimodal data. most of the times these data is hard to understand by humans. In terms of deployment into clinic, I think one of the main challenges is how to better evaluate fairness and to make sure that these models are not biased against a certain class or distribution in the data. So this is something that we are also looking at, how to best evaluate. So this is kind of a new research field in AI specific for clinical applications, how to best evaluate bias and fairness in these AI models for healthcare.
Thanks, Ines. I wonder if anyone else wanted to make comments about how we're keeping the patient data safe while we go about integrating and using it on the platform. Amied, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a really important topic and probably one that we don't talk about enough because there is a lot of confusion as to how data is utilized by vendors such as GE Healthcare or even researchers in the academic and healthcare space. But we take great precaution in working with patient data amongst all phases of working with the data, whether it's in a development phase or in a production environment. We follow strict ethics and governance protocols, either that are run nationally by HRA, for example, or local policy guidelines from the trust, as well as national and European guidelines around GDPR and the safe use of patient data. We also go, within GE Healthcare at least, we go to the extra step of having a dedicated data team responsible for quarantining data. They review and comb the data for PHI or personal health information, and they either reject the data, delete it, so there's no breach, and kind of reinstate that process again from scratch to make sure it's clean coming over to our product teams before we run into any trouble. We take this extremely seriously. We apply the mindset of we are patients ourselves and we don't want our data to be breached in any way. And so we handle the data in that manner. As it relates to AI models and bias, part of our programs, we try to install a work package or an area of research around responsible AI. For example, with our existing program, we have a dedicated work package around detecting bias in the data. So obviously you're going to have biases that are unrelated to the technology, things like access, things like biases that generally exist, organically exist within the healthcare system. Identifying those up front will help us prevent us, hopefully, from perpetuating those biases when we deploy technology as well. So that's one aspect. Second, there is running a process in the development phase and the deployment phase of the model development. And that's to identify any new biases that are created. And we can do that by testing how well the algorithm is performing on different subgroups, different demographic groups, different age brackets, different genders, etc., to see that we're seeing the same performance across all these different groups and classifications. And that helps us better monitor bias on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, thanks, Amied. It's a really important topic, as you say. Gabriel, did you want to add something?
Just to echo what Amied said, we take all the precautions and we treat this very importantly. And also we include our patients group in this collaboration. So we always seek their advice and their guidance on how to best utilize the data to actually develop the models, but also to deploy to them in clinic. So recently when we want to actually transition from the development to the production step, we actually involve our patient group to discuss how to do that best. And everyone was very supportive as long as we work in a federated environment. So just to explain, federated environment means that no data goes outside the hospital environment, only the global metrics, so how well the system works or what are the errors that the system finds, but not patient level information will goes out of that system. So as long as we have all these precautions in place, I think everyone was very supportive.
Thank you. And that brings us nicely on to my next question, which is, have we shown the platform to any patients or clinicians yet? And what was their reaction?
The team at GE developed these demos videos about the Oncocare and how it summarizes the data. And I have presented this to the different cancer teams at Addenbrooke. So I've met with the breast cancer team and I've shown them the demo and how we can maybe consider the next phase to involve other cancer types. And they were very enthusiastic about this and they were very keen to get working on this platform, and also to think about what are the key elements that the Oncocare system should surface for breast cancer in particular. but also I presented a demo to the patients groups at our annual workshop, and everyone was very enthusiastic again because they see the value of having unity amongst the different systems and bringing everything in one system to allow us to accelerate clinical trials or other development which will have impact on maybe not the current patients, but hopefully in the next years to have actionable changes to the patient's outcomes.
Yeah, so part of our current program, just to add to what Gabriel just mentioned, we ran a small study at the start of last year with really good results. Some of the takeaways from that study were 92% of the clinicians reported that adding Oncocare to their current system would simplify their workflow. Another 84% of the clinicians rated Oncocare as being somewhat very easy to learn after 15 minutes of training, just showing the intuitiveness of the system itself. And then separate to that, we have ongoing dialogue with oncologists globally, but also, within Cambridge as well, to design and build the interface. So the interface is not done on an island. We're not building it in isolation. Gabriel is actually a big part of incorporating some of his insights and advice as to what makes sense, how data should be presented, how data should be formatted within the interface. And that, we get that regular feedback from Cambridge and beyond, so there's great reaction obviously from there because they're seeing some of the advice that they're giving, they're seeing it come through on the interface itself. And then to Gabriel's previous point around patient representatives, we do have representative groups as part of our joint governance board. We share and solicit feedback on the tools and the overall direction that we're working towards on this program and really try to take that on board as much as possible.
Yeah, it's so important to have patients involved, isn't it, in something like this? Because let's face it, this is all for them in the end, and the healthcare professionals. So, and obviously to have a wide-ranging group of professionals have a look at the platform and give their input, it's so great to get all of that feedback and incorporate it. I wanted to ask you, what is the next step for the Oncocare project? What happens next?
Yeah, I guess from a G perspective, the immediate next step is run the prospective study, show the value to users and patients. But then a little bit beyond that, I think running further studies to incorporate some and host maybe some of these advanced features, such as the AI tools that the team here have been describing. Things like Ines was mentioning around measuring the longitudinal total disease burden. That'd be a really interesting piece to include. And other similar technologies may be developed by the Cambridge team or actually third-party companies that have relevant tools in this space. That's where we're going to see the biggest value, the biggest impact. It's going to take a bit of time. We have to do it in a safe and ethical manner, so we do it offline in a sandbox environment. But building on what we have, which is now a platform or tool for us to synthesize a lot of this data and aggregate it across into a really meaningful presentation in oncology. Adding these extra layers over time would be really, really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to ask final question to each of my researchers on this call, which is two questions combined into one, actually. It's where do you see your research taking you in the next 5 to 10 years? And where do you see integrated cancer medicine taking us as a collaboration in the next 5 to 10 years? So let's start with Thomas.
I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see that the methods that we develop are improving and that they are getting clinically ready and bringing really value to patients and clinicians. At the moment, we can see that there is a ton of research being made in academia and in the universities, but that not much of that is actually arriving in clinical care. Not many doctors really benefit from that. And I think within the next 5 to 10 years, we will breach this gap and make these tools really usable for the clinicians. And this means that we really have to squeeze out the last few percentage in the models. We really have to find the cases where the model fails and improve the models there in order to make the predictions that they make really usable. And in the next 5 to 10 years, I think I want to continue my road as an AI engineer and learn how to better build these models in real clinical world setting on real world data.
Amazing. And Ines?
I agree with Thomas. I think in 5 years it would be really nice if we could start to see the impact of these tools that we are developing in the lab at the moment into clinical practice, to see that we are changing the patient journey. We are actually better to make better diagnoses, early detection of different types of cancer, to better treat cancer patients.
And your research, Ines, where are you going?
I plan to work on research, follow all these advances in AI, specifically for cancer research. I'm also involved in other projects on cardiac imaging, but I think it'd be really nice if we could continue working on AI model development for medical applications.
Fantastic. We want to keep you in this space. And Gabriel, finally to you.
I agree with everyone here that in the next 5 years, we'll see a major improvement in the way we utilize the data that we have. So the standard of care generated data hopefully will become knowledge, and this knowledge will be expanded globally. So I see also the opportunity that AI will allow us to actually cover this problem with inequality in terms of access to healthcare. So, we can transfer this knowledge, this expertise from major centers to smaller hospitals and then overcome these fragmented data flows. I think to me, this is one of the big achievements that we will see. And in terms of my career, I hope to become a molecular oncologist or an academic molecular oncologist where I will not treat cancer patients, but I will actually look at disease-specific features that will be weaknesses to that cancer. And actually, we hope to cure or to start improving outcomes for patients who have now untreatable or very poor prognostic cancers.
That is a wonderful aim. And I'm going to give the last word to Amied. Just anything that we haven't already said about Oncocare that you would like to leave in the listeners' minds.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind answering one of those questions that you posed at the end.
Go ahead.
You said where to see integrated cancer medicine taking us in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I agree with my colleagues here around the research and the work they're doing. And I don't think I can top what Gabriel's going to be working on over the next 5 to 10 years. I think that's brilliant work. But for me personally, if I was going to split this sort of question up in an ideal world, we'll probably rely less on these tools that we've just spoken about for the last 30 odd minutes, because they're relevant for those already on the cancer pathway. I would love for us or integrated cancer medicine to reach further into primary care, identifying symptoms before they result in late stage presentation of the disease, and maybe even reach even further upstream and focus on prevention of disease in healthy individuals. That's where I think the biggest investment should go, and that's where we'll have the biggest impact. But that's very idealistic, and that's probably centering back on where we are today. I think with my GE Healthcare hat on, we'll continue to innovate tools to better manage disease. And we can't really do it without maintaining partnerships like this one with Cambridge. And this goes a long way in accelerating us getting these tools into the hands of people that need it. To talk a little bit more about some of the comments made today, I guess, if we can stay focused on the problem statements that are presented by the clinical teams and not necessarily have just a technology for technology's sake approach, and assuming we can greatly improve the accuracy of these AI systems, the generative AI systems that are coming to market, I can really see that there's a huge, huge opportunity for us to shift towards better outcomes for all healthcare providers and their patients, and every stakeholder involved in this pathway and this important work. So again, just to kind of summarize, let's tackle prevention at the same time as we're tackling the knee-jerk reaction to these diseases as well.
Fantastic. Oh, it's such an exciting project. I wish you all a huge success with it. And I look forward to another update in a couple of years' time and see where we are and what impact it's had. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you want to find out more about the work of the Mark Foundation Institute for Integrated Cancer Medicine, please visit our website at www.integratedcancermedicine.org, where you can find details of the ICM vision, all the current research, clinical trials, resources, publications, and team information. You can keep up to date with our latest news and events, and you can also sign up for our newsletter. If you would like more information about the work of the CRUK Cambridge Centre, please go to www.crukcambridgecentre.org.uk, or you can connect with us on Twitter using our handle @CRUKCamCentre. Thanks for listening, and do join us again soon.